So welcome back to ICRE's explanatory videos about different considerations when you're writing your papers. Today we are going to talk about George Orwell's 6 rules for good writing style. So I'm going to share my screen and walk everyone through some slides to understand what we're going to be talking about. And these are the sorts of things that you want to keep in mind when you're writing an essay that are just generally considered good practice. The rules will help you write in a clearer, more compelling way. They're pretty simple, and once you get them into your mind, they should become second nature. So let's go through the rules. As mentioned, there are 6. Number 1, never use a metaphor, simile, or other figure of speech that you are used to seeing in print. Number 2, never use a long word when a short one will do. Number 3, if it's possible to cut a word out, always cut it out. Number 4, never use the passive voice where you can use the active voice. Number 5, never use a foreign phrase, scientific word, or jargon word if you can think of an everyday English equivalent. And lastly, be willing to break any of the rules rather than say anything outright barbarous, to use Orwell's language. So let's go through these in a bit more depth. The first rule, never use a metaphor, simile, or other figure of speech that you're used to seeing in print. A common mistake that happens stylistically is students will use metaphors that are just kind of out there in our culture. We're familiar with them, so we use them because everybody knows them. But Orwell's point is that when you do that, you actually can cause a problem, because if a metaphor is widely accepted, it's probably lost its original meaning to some degree. So let's take a common example that we see in the context of a sports game or a sports match. People might say that the game was a real battle. And the idea with the image of the battle, with the metaphor of the battle, is to describe what happened as intense conflict. Maybe it was a particularly close Super Bowl or something to that effect. It was a real battle, and what that metaphor originally meant, as mentioned just now, is to emphasize conflict, competition. In reality, sports, though they are competitions, they're nowhere near battles. Players aren't warriors. The stakes are far lower. People aren't dying in the World Series. So while the metaphor originally surfaced to describe what is going on, it has become so overused that we don't really realize why it's not an appropriate metaphor. It doesn't matter how strict the competition is in a stadium. That's a far different scenario than someone actually dying in the course of events. The implications of a game are just that, they're a game. They don't result in countries sort of losing their sovereignty to other countries, these sorts of things. Avoid commonly used metaphors, because the original purpose of the metaphor tends to have been kind of filed down if that metaphor has become common in our culture. A good practice is just to start to pay attention when you're reading things or listening to things online. Pay attention to metaphors that show up over and over, and just kind of make a mental list of those sorts of metaphors, and then don't use them in your writing. The second rule is never use a long word when a short one will do. A common tendency when writing a paper is to use big words because they make us sound quote unquote smart. But Orwell's point is that that tendency is actually pretty counterproductive. And the best way to show this to students, I like to use a clip from one of my favorite TV shows, Friends, that can capture how this dynamic in the extreme leads to problems.
I don't understand. Some of the words a little too sophisticated for you.
It doesn't make any sense.
Of course it does. It's smart. I used the thesaurus. On every word? Yep.
What was this sentence originally?
Oh, they are warm, nice people with big hearts. And that became they're humid, prepossessing Homo sapiens with full-sized aortic pumps. Yeah. And hey, I really mean it, dude.
All right, Joey, I don't think we can use this.
Why not?
Well, because you signed it Baby Kangaroo Tribbiani. Why don't you stop worrying about sounding smart and just be yourself?
You know what? You don't need a thesaurus. Just write from here. Your full-sized aortic pump.
So what's going on here is a silly but good example of how using big words can be counterproductive. Joey's whole purpose in writing this letter is to convey his heartfelt understanding of his friendship with Chandler and Monica. And that's the original sentence that Chandler and Monica ask him about. And he says, I was speaking from my heart. And then by defaulting to the thesaurus and using a big word for every word in the true meaning of what he wants to say, we end up with something that sounds absurd and is ultimately unusable. You want to use language that is effective in terms of conveying what you are thinking. Don't worry about sounding smart by using big words. If a short word can get the point across, use the short word. Rule number 3 is if it's possible to cut a word out, always cut it out. So a simple couple section of sentences here. I checked the mail this afternoon at 2:45 to see if my package came. When I opened the mailbox to check, I found the package from the store. My Halloween costume was here, so my plans were still on. A pretty simple way of describing something that happened. But take a second and think about what in these few sentences can you cut out without affecting the meaning of the sentence. So we'll pause here for about 30 seconds so you can think through these sentences and think about what could you remove without changing what is being talked about. So hopefully you have some ideas, having reread those briefly. I'm going to fast forward to another version of these few sentences with a few things removed. I checked the mail this afternoon to see if my package came. When I opened the mailbox, I found the package. My Halloween costume was here, so my plans were still on. In each instance here that I've crossed out, the words don't add meaning to the sentence. In that first sentence, the point is that you checked the mail this afternoon to see if the package came. What time specifically doesn't really matter. You can remove at 2:45 and still get the same meaning of the sentence. And in fact, you create urgency by not having that extra couple of words in there. You really want to build in saying, it doesn't really matter what time this occurred. The point is it happened recently and I was looking forward to something in the mailbox. Same thing in the second sentence. When I open the mailbox to check, that's different than when I open the mailbox. You can remove those last couple words, one, because you've already implied them in the first sentence, but two, the point is not to look inside as a separate act from opening the mailbox. Opening the mailbox, everybody understands it. What do you do that for? You do that to look inside. So you don't have to reiterate why you would open a mailbox. We kind of understand why you would open the mailbox. And then same thing in the second half of that sentence. I found the package from the store. Once we know the package is there, the store doesn't really matter as much. So in each instance, what we're doing here is just removing extra detail that doesn't ultimately add to the meaning of the sentence. And in fact, by removing them, you don't just retain the meaning, but you also improve the flow of these sentences. With these few spots removed, the language actually creates more of the urgency and excitement that you're ultimately getting at. Why did you check the mailbox? Because you really wanted your costume to come. And now that it's here, your plans for that costume are still on. If you can cut words out, cut them out. And this is something that does take a little bit of practice to get in the habit of doing, because we all will add words that we don't need. It's a very natural thing to do. So train your brain to read back over what you have written and ask yourself, are those little details really needed to get my key point across? The next rule, never use the passive voice where you can use the active voice. So this first sentence here is an example of passive voice. The lamp was broken by me. And the good news for passive voice is that the construct is very easy to spot because it looks the same. You're going to have an object of a sentence plus some form of the verb to be, and that can be, I am, you are, he, she, it was, we are, they are. It can also be in the past tense, I was, you were, he was, they were, we were. So object plus some form of the verb to be, and then the verb that is the key action in the sentence. In this example, the verb is breaking, though here it's rendered as broken. So to be was verb broken. And then the final point of the passive voice construct is by subject. In this example sentence, the lamp was broken by me. I am the one who did the breaking of the lamp. Sometimes you won't see the subject included in passive voice. Simple example, the ball was thrown. So you have the object, the ball, some form of the verb to be, was, and then the verb thrown. So if you don't see by subject, you're still going to be dealing with passive voice. So back to our example, the lamp was broken by me. The point of the sentence is that someone broke the lamp. That's the key action. But with a passive voice construct, the person doing the breaking, me, is pushed to the end of the sentence. Passive voice pushes the subject back, and that de-emphasizes what is going on. What the sentence is about is someone breaking the lamp. I broke the lamp, and that's the active form of the sentence, and you can see that below. The verb was broken becomes broke. Who did it? I did. I'm the subject. I broke the lamp. What did I break? The lamp. The lamp is the object, not the main idea of the sentence. So anytime you see passive voice, if you can switch it to active voice, you should do so. Rule number 5 is never use a foreign phrase, scientific word, or jargon word if you can think of an everyday English equivalent. So I have a sentence here that uses some jargon. So let's read it out loud. I can only describe the feeling as a combination of high levels of dopamine and a related hormone, norepinephrine. A lot of people would say, well, what the heck are you talking about? What is this? You're using jargon in this sentence. And jargon, much like our using complex words and short words will do, often will obscure the meaning of your sentence. This is a much better way to say the same thing. I can only describe the feeling as love. That is going to make sense to most people who read your paper. The previous example is probably going to leave most people scratching their heads. If you can use clear, concise, basic language instead of jargon, you should do so. Now, the final rule is important. And the final rule is that you're more than welcome and in fact should break a rule if there's a good reason for doing so. So if we go back to our example about the chemicals of love, if you're writing an analysis of studies on the chemicals of love, it might make sense to use jargon language. If there's a particular expectation you have to meet from your teacher, use the jargon. It's okay to break the rules. The key thing to emphasize is that if you're going to break the rules, make sure you have a good reason for doing so. And there's a very simple test to ask if you have a reason, and that's to say, why would I break this rule? If you can answer that question clearly and with for a good reason, then by all means break the rule rather than stick to it. The more important part, of course, is learn these rules, make sure that you are keeping them in mind as you write, and obey them most often. And then remember that there are certain instances where it will make sense to use language that does break the rule. Language is always something that you can adapt and be creative with, so never stick to any single rule all the time. So hopefully that brief exercise was helpful to run through these different rules. These style rules will help prove the quality of your writing. So feel free to be in touch if you have any questions about any of them, and we'll look forward to seeing you on our next short tutorial video.